I would like to think so, yes. So the work that I've done includes helping to build out like a homeless program in San Francisco that includes more drug rehab for people. So I've helped create more opportunities for people to get off the street. And then I've also argued and worked really hard for better local, statewide, and national policy, especially around things like drug-free housing for people that want to live in it. So, so for example, there's a lot of homeless families out there, right? Mom, single mom, couple of kids are experiencing homelessness. Um, if we gave that mom and her kids a choice and said, "Hey, you can either live in this apartment where everybody around you is using drugs, like most hotels in the Tenderloin, or you can live in this apartment where no drugs are allowed in the entire building. Which one would you want to live in?" And then we give them a choice. And the majority of them are going to choose to live in the drug-free environment because that's a better place to raise your kid. And so we want to create, we're trying to create choices like that for someone like me that came out of drug rehab. So I was on the street homeless as a drug addict, right? I go to a 6 month drug rehab, like a live-in drug rehab. That's pretty hardcore. I come out of there. If you had put me back in the Tenderloin, I would have relapsed and started using drugs again because everybody around me is using drugs. All my friends that I used to use drugs with are still there, and I would have for sure fallen off. But instead, I went to go live in a house, like they call it a halfway house, a house where no drugs are allowed. And that really helped lengthen my time of being clean and sober. And that helped kind of deepen the things that I learned when I was in rehab. And I've now hit 7 years of sobriety where I haven't touched a drink or a drug for 7 whole years. And my life is way better now, sober, than it was even before I was using drugs. Yeah, yeah. So that doesn't mean that I want nobody to use drugs and alcohol. That's not what I'm saying. But there's a subset of people who use drugs and alcohol that cannot manage their life when they do use drugs and alcohol. It becomes an addiction, right? And so that doesn't mean that, look, I have kids. My daughter just graduated high school. My son's about to start his junior year in high school. And I talk to them, and I know that they're gonna maybe pop an edible or they're gonna drink a beer. Like I'm not gonna sit there and say, no, you can't do that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying is that when you're gonna use stuff like that, one, make good choices, and two, just remember what happened to your dad about how, about, hey, you can fall into drug addiction because you got to think I wasn't just like some bum my whole life. I had a regular job. I was working for the city and county of San Francisco, and I was married with 2 kids. And then I had surgery on my foot, and I got addicted to painkillers. That happens to a lot of people. So I was just a regular guy that happened to. So I try to let my kids know that and want them to understand that so that they make good choices when they're going to decide to use a drink or a drug. So a lot of it's about awareness and education around drugs, which is why I'm talking to you because you're trying to bring awareness to this, which is good. And I appreciate the fact that your kid trying to bring awareness to it. Like that's super important because one of the, fentanyl, now everyone's talking about fentanyl. It's funny, a few years ago, like with kids, with young people, it was all about don't vape, and I thought that that was silly. But here we are, right? They were talking about that. You remember all that, right? No flavored vapes and blah, blah, blah. And then, right, right, right. But then what ended up happening is that you started to have these kids that thought they were going on social media and they were like, oh, I'm gonna get me some, I'm gonna buy this drug off of social media, whatever drug it is, and then that drug was contaminated with fentanyl. And then the kid ingested that drug and they died of a drug overdose. And you started seeing that more and more and more and more and more. So it's really important that we educate and raise awareness so those types of things, terrible tragedies happen less frequently because that's something that's become a big problem. So um, I encourage you and anyone else that sees this, whatever happens with your film, to just remember to just make good choices and educate yourself and become aware about the drugs that are out there and understand that when you buy drugs off the street, when you buy drugs off of Snap or somewhere else, that there's a 6 in 10 chance, 60% chance that that drug is contaminated with fentanyl. That means that you're literally got a 6 in 10 chance of you overdosing and dying if you do one of those drugs. So just be really, really aware of that. That's all I would say to that. Right. You just have to be careful. You just have to be careful. Like, you don't want to buy, like, you're at a party. If someone's like, passing around whatever they're passing around, cocaine or Xanax bars or whatever, just understand that there's a 6 in 10 chance that there's fentanyl in that drug. So don't touch it. Don't take it, right? Never let someone else get you a drink. You get your own drink. You know what I mean? Someone's passing around something to smoke. Don't take it. Make sure it's your own stuff. Like, you have to really think that way. Otherwise, you're putting yourself at additional risk of taking the drug that's been contaminated with what they call illicit fentanyl, and that could be a deadly choice for you or for anyone who sees it. That sees. Well, I mean, my own experience with homelessness and drug addiction was one significant set of events in my life. But then when I got into rehab, that really changed my outlook on life because I embraced the the steps that were given to me as part of my recovery, which was kind of like a roadmap of how to live my life without drugs and alcohol. That really changed my life for the better. That was like when the direction and the view and the way I look at life changed. Because I went through rehabilitation, I found faith. And it doesn't have to be Jesus. It can be faith in whatever power is greater than yourself. I found that, and I found like kind of like a way to look at life through a lens of gratitude, instead being grateful for what I've got instead of what I don't have. Because when you look at life and you start looking at other people with money or cars or whatever, and you resent them, you start resenting them, that's actually the root of evil right there. So instead of resenting people, just be grateful for what you have and then work really hard for what you want to achieve. Well, I have felt unsafe before. I've had my life threatened and stuff when I was out there on the street, but I feel safe. Yeah, generally speaking. Look, people on the street that are experiencing homelessness, majority of them aren't bad people. Are there criminals and people with open bench warrants and stuff like that hiding amongst the homeless? You bet there are. Absolutely there are. But a lot of the people that are out there are just sick. Like, they're sick. They have a disease, and that disease is called addiction, or they have a disease of mental illness, or they've experienced a ton of trauma in their life, and they need someone to help them. But sometimes that help comes in the form of accountability. Not all the time, but we need to find a way as a city to blend compassion, which means, understanding that these people have had a hard life or going through a hard time, but also holding people accountable when they break the law, like run into Walgreens and steal, or break someone, bip somebody's car and steal their backpack. Like, they need to be held accountable for that. And that accountability either needs to be the criminal justice system or treatment, but we can't just keep letting them out on the street with their addiction because they perpetually do the same thing over and over again because they're addicted to drugs. And until we address the addiction issue there, and provide resources for folks, the problem is going to continue or even get worse. Well, I mean, crime is definitely down in San Francisco in the last year or so. Brooke Jenkins, the DA, has done a really good job. The new mayor is doing a really good job. So crime overall is down. Um, but whenever you have a situation in any city where you've got somewhere between 4,000 and 8,000 people on the street at any given time, like sleeping out on the street, going to the bathroom out on the street, using drugs out on the street, you're going to have an unsafe situation. Uh, it's particularly for like women that are experiencing homelessness. They probably have the hardest time. There's a lot of sexual assaults amongst women that are experiencing homelessness. But just in general, because of the desperation of experiencing homelessness, the unabated drug use that's happening, uh, it can create some pretty serious situations that are not safe. So there are there are blocks within the city right now that at nighttime, even me, a guy that used to be out there on the street, like I wouldn't feel safe at. And that's because we've got thousands of people out on the street, and most of them are using drugs. So that's one thing. So it's all about resources, right? Two things. It's resources, providing more treatment beds, more housing opportunities, uh, and the other piece of that is accountability. And that doesn't mean just going out and arresting people. It means that we have to change some of our laws or how our laws are interpreted within our court system in San Francisco so that people that continue to commit the same crimes over and over and over again aren't just continually referred to what they call diversion programs. At some point, they have to be held accountable for their behavior. Otherwise, we create what they call a two-tiered justice system, in that people like you and me, or even let's just say you, are held to a different standard of the law than someone that's who's homeless and experiencing drug addiction is for committing the same crime. So if you go and you steal from Macy's a bunch of sunglasses at Macy's, you're going to get treated one way. And if someone who's homeless goes and steals a bunch of glasses at Macy's because they're a fentanyl addict and they're trying to sell those glasses on the street, they get treated a different way. And that's wrong. Justice is supposed to be blind, and we need to change the way our courts and our judges approach these cases so that everybody's held accountable, whether that means jail or treatment or a combination of both. We have to hold people accountable for their behavior. Otherwise, the behavior will just continue.